Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner launched Labour's local election campaign today with the promise of national renewal. Starmer accused the Conservatives of preying on the hopes of working people by making big promises on levelling up and then failing to deliver.
Imagine that, a politician promising something they don't deliver.
Yeah.
He also called out Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for failing to call a general election and accused him of running scared.
Look, I do have to be honest. I was hoping we'd be launching a different election campaign here today. But the Prime Minister bottled it. He wants one last drawn-out summer tour with his beloved helicopter. So we need to send him another message. Show his party once again that their time is up. The dithering must stop. The date must be set. Britain wants change, and it's time for change with Labour.
Well, there you go. That wasn't Ian Collins. That was Sir Keir Starmer. We're still joined by former government advisor Leon Emirali. I mean, the thing is with politics now, I feel like Labour are getting a ton of support in the polls because people are like, well, we cannot vote for the Conservative Party. And in most people's minds, there are just two parties. I don't think anyone's buying his stuff either, are they? No one's listening to that going, this is going to be the revolution, finally, the big, change in Britain we've all been hoping for.
No, I think Keir Starmer is incredibly underwhelming. You just look at that clip and here he is, we're going to take back the country or whatever. I just think that he hasn't got the X factor that Tony Blair did have that led him to get that landslide that these polls currently suggest. So I actually think Rishi Sunak's got a point. I think the polls will narrow as we get a bit closer to the election. Whether it's enough to be any good to the Conservatives, I doubt. But still, Keir Starmer, I think, will also be in trouble because if it isn't a massive majority, Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting, all of those pretenders are going to be breathing down Keir Starmer's neck saying, hey, I could have got us a bigger majority. So I think he has to get a huge majority if he wants to be safe, even if they win the election.
Well, if Angela Rayner gets in any trouble, she's got a golden future as a property speculator, so that's
well, she might be
good
going to
news
Bedford
for her.
prison, you never know.
But I tell you what, whatever he says, gee, Keir, I wonder why Rishi isn't calling an election now. You bottled it. Well, of course he has. If he did, he'd lose. But this Keir Starmer triumphism, that's going to become really, really tedious over a long, long summer, isn't it? He knows he's on his way to the top job and he's rubbing our noses in it. But this levelling up business, this is the latest Labour policy stolen from the Tories, the migrant crisis. Well, what we're going to do when we get in is we're going to tackle the migrant crisis better than the Tories. What we're going to do is we're going to do levelling up, but we'll do it better than the Tories. Not exactly inspirational policy, is it?
Where's the vision, Keir?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's what I want to know, is you can't just simply pander to what effectively he thinks the public want to hear. I miss the good old days when politicians like Margaret Thatcher had a point of view. They knew it wasn't particularly popular, but they would try and sell that vision to the country. Whereas now it seems like politicians of all stripes are simply trying to feed back to the country what they think the public want to hear. And I think that's cowardice politics.
I'm not sure they feed anything back. The only thing I've ever heard Labour say is basically we're going to go after the people trafficking gangs. And it's like, are you there? I mean, surely there's like Interpol and Europol and everyone doing that anyway, failing, of course.
Why don't you go after the migrants as well? That's what I say.
Why don't you go after your deputy leader, who apparently is allegedly being reinvestigated? Well, she is being reinvestigated by police for allegedly pretending she wasn't living in her rights to buy home. No, pretending she was, living in her right to buy home when she was living with her then husband in his rights to buy home that they both bought, so she could avoid paying capital gains tax when she sold it. It's all for people going, well, she might have lived there, she might have lived there, apples and pears, but that's fraud. If you're lying about where you're living to avoid paying tax, that's not good.
It's not good. And I think the problem that Angela Rayner's got is she goes after her political opponents quite vigorously when they do something
scum, aren't they,
wrong.
her opponents?
Indeed, she calls Conservatives scum and she's quite animated in her language. And I have to ask the question, if it was a Conservative MP who was being accused of what Angela Rayner is being accused of, what would Angela Rayner say about them? And I think it's the hypocrisy of it that is a real problem for the country, because they look at her, they like Angela Rayner because they think she's authentic, those that do like her. Well, is this authentic? Because she's effectively trying to pull the wool over their eyes, or so it seems, if this is to be correct. So I think she's in big trouble.
I think my view on this as well is if Mrs. Miggins did this, she'd be in big trouble. If you and I did this, we would be in big trouble. We'd rightly be investigated by the authorities and said, you've lied, this is fraud, you've avoided tax, you know, cough up and face whatever punishment you deserve.
We must stress that Rayner denies all wrongdoing.
Well, of course she does.
But the fact that the police, they originally decided no investigation required here. There have been complaints from the Tories, actually, and the police have looked at it again and said, actually, we're reassessing this. It could well mean that an investigation will be launched into the Deputy Labour leader, and that is going to spell big trouble in the run-up to the election. Talking of Labour, Dale Vince, that eco-nut, billionaire, whatever he is, he's getting divorced from his wife, Kate Vince. Dale Vince used to give money to Just Stop Oil. That's the kind of sucker he is. But he also is a big donor to the Labour Party. Anyway, in this divorce with his wife, Kate, any future donations that he makes to anything, including the Labour Party, he has got to declare. So that could be interesting.
It could be, couldn't it? And I wonder if maybe Dale Vince was thinking this divorce was on the line, so he was squirreling away his money towards the Labour Party so that she couldn't get her hands on any of it. But I think it's quite an extraordinary state of affairs that he has to declare it to his wife. But it tells you who are Labour getting the money from? It's the trade unions who are effectively trying to cripple our economy, and it's these do-gooders, millionaires, billionaires who think we should all be living in a different way because they're going to be just fine. And I think that tells you exactly what you need to know about Labour.
By the way, Dale Vince thinks that Hamas are freedom fighters, so that's about all you need to know about that guy.
Now, let's speculate about when an election might be and what it may look like. So, first of all, looking at some polling coming out lately, and some of it is, well, you know, exciting.
Encouraging, is that
interesting.
the word you're looking for?
Epoch-defining. No, but in particular, Reform UK. Now, we have seen the rise of UKIP. We saw Brexit Party in 2019 polling pretty well. But at the same time, the Conservative Party were in a strong position. So you didn't really get the sort of landscape you're getting now, which is in some parts of the country, most notably Wales. This is according to a new Redfield and Wilton Strategist survey, basically found that Reform are now ahead of Wales in the polling, ahead of the Conservatives in Wales. They're also ahead of the Conservatives in the north of England. They're level pegging with the Conservatives in the Midlands. Of course, when you get a national poll, you've got to take into consideration that you've got all those big sort of lefty conurbations in London and the Scottish and their mad ideas. But when you target those sort of Brexity areas, the ones who voted Conservative in 2019, in a lot of those places, Reform are now beating the Conservatives.
Yeah, they are, and that will be hugely worrying for the Conservatives and Rishi Sunak. And I think I understand the appeal of Reform UK if you are, a right-winger and you maybe supported Brexit and think that Brexit hasn't been delivered in the way it could have been. I get that frustration, but my issue with Reform is that if you don't want a Labour government, if that is your main priority, and I don't want to see a Labour government, then I do think Reform are going to leave the door open, much like Bedford Prison, to Keir Starmer to walk into Downing Street. And I think what we've got is a perfect storm for Labour, where the SNP are collapsing in Scotland, so they're going to sweep up there, and Reform are going to take a lot of votes away from the Conservatives in England. So they have got a really clear path towards
when this great
10.
competition does unfold, do you think it will be, as has been suggested today, I'm not buying it, June? Now, the G7 is happening in Italy then, so that's unlikely. Then also June through to July is the Euro 2024 football, so I doubt that. G20 in Brazil for July. They're unlikely to do it through the summer. I don't think it'll be in June. I think it'll be in October. What do you reckon, Leon?
Yeah, I reckon October, November is my bet as well. I mean, I do think there's too much congestion in June, as you've just pointed out. Although, maybe, if England do very well at the Euros, there could be a feel-good factor in the country that perhaps the Conservatives...
Forget about that for coaching the England
You never
squad.
know. Well, you never know. But I do think that autumn looks more likely. And the other reason why I think autumn is probably going to be difficult for the Conservatives is because you're going to have a summer of migrant crossings that I'm sure we'll speak about shortly. You're going to have a summer of migrant crossings, and that's going to not reflect very well. So perhaps he's tempted by an earlier election to avoid that.
Well, this is it. The Tory tacticians are going to be thinking, if we go now, Is that sort of cutting off our nose to spite our face? We might see those polls narrowing later on in the year. Or if we wait that long, might we be completely steamrolled and on 8% of the vote after everyone and their dog has come over on a boat across the channel?
Here's Rishi in probably full electoral mode. I'm going to pass out Kleenex for everybody now. Here he is talking. Oh, hang on. Here he is talking about how tough it is because he can't really be a good father while he's a lousy Prime Minister.
Probably the toughest thing, because you met my kids when they were, tiny and 2 and 3. I mean, I've got 2 young girls who mean the world to me, and obviously doing these jobs, it's hard to balance being a good dad and doing the job well. And obviously you have to prioritise this job because it's an important job and you're doing it on behalf of the whole country. So, not being there for them as much as any dad would like to be is a challenge. And there's particular moments where you really feel that acutely because there's something very difficult going on that you just can't be there for them.
Well, you know what, Rishi, as a young father of little girls, no one made you stab Boris Johnson in the back and take that photo out of number 11 Downing Street to get your mitts on the throne, did they? No. You want to spend more time at home with your family. Maybe you could have kept your green card, lived in California in the sunshine and done just that. No one forced you.
He made that heartbreak decision that so many politicians have to at some point. He resigned from his family to spend more time with his career, didn't he?
He did indeed. He did indeed. Yeah, you often hear it from politicians, don't you? The toughest job is to be a dad, to be a father. Well, no one's forced you into this career. But I think Rishi Sunak's a good bloke. I think he's decent.
I agree with that.
I think he's principled, and I do think he's a family man, and that's
nice.
great. And I do.
Just a lousy Prime Minister. That's the problem.
It's difficult for him. But he also said in that interview that he inherited a really tough economic situation from Liz Truss. He did. Now we can't get that wrong. However, Liz Truss is still a Conservative, and that's the problem: is that he sees his role as Prime Minister as a completely blank slate. It's not.
The unfortunate thing about the Conservative Party and all the leaders of the Conservative Party is they keep inheriting really bad situations from the Conservative Party. I mean, you can't blame the Conservative Party when the Conservative Party have messed things up for the Conservative Party, can you? Poor Conservative Party.
Yeah. No, you can't. You can't.
Now, talking about things that the Conservative Party are inheriting from the Conservative Party, one is clearly borders about as good as the prison doors in Bedford jail, because the number of migrants crossing into the UK just goes up and up. And guess what? We've set another record for this spring. I just don't understand why, when you've got the shortest stretch of water in Europe that these people are crossing, we don't intercept the boats and turn them around. I don't get why not.
No, well, I don't either, Alex. I think that is an easy solution, isn't it, on the face of it? I'm sure it's more complex than that. But what I don't understand is that it seems as though we've only got one policy that we are putting our eggs in the basket of stopping the migrant crisis, and that's Rwanda. Whether or not a flight takes off, and I'm not convinced necessarily that it will anytime soon, then I don't think it's going to have the deterrent effect that the government are hoping it will. So there needs to be a plan B, and there needs to be a plan C after that, so that we've got a secure border that stops people entering this country illegally. I think it takes international cooperation, I think, is a really key part of this. I think the French need to do more to stop those migrants getting on those boats in the same place. Well, indeed, and I think there needs to be a bit of diplomacy going on.
The French would do more if those boats were taken back to France. I mean, that's the thing. Under the UN Convention, Article 33, you have a right to defend your borders and your territorial waters. Can you imagine if during the Spanish Armada, we're like, oh no, look, all those Spanish coming over on the boats. Is it legal to stop them? Well, come on.
This is the problem with international law, is a lot of it was written, in particular the Refugee Convention, written after the aftermath of World War II, when there was naturally a lot of displacement of people. That was a long time ago now. We need to reflect, international law needs to reflect what's going on in the here and now. And I think clearly we aren't the only country with a migrant crisis, and it needs to be updated.
Just to fill in the gaps here, basically, this is the highest number of migrants that have come over for the first 3 months of any year. The previous highest was 4,548. That was in 2022. This year, we got 4,644. And shockingly, on Tuesday alone, 388 more migrants arrived on 7 boats. And we've got the calm and clement summer ahead. This is going to be a nightmare for Sunak, because this is going to be, to use that very controversial word, an utter invasion, which is what it always has
It
been.
is.
So, got to be careful. Language is so important, right? No, it's an invasion. Right, let's talk about Abdul Azadi.
One of our favourite
The chemical attack.
right?
Favourite
Favourite illegal migrant,
favourite Christian convert.
Yeah.
We have pictures now in the papers today
Look at this Christian
proving
service.
that he was buried as a Muslim. So when he was converted to Christianity by sucker clergymen and idiots in the Home Office accepting his story and a judge accepting his story, all along he was not a Christian. He was a Muslim, and we've got pictures of his burial, the Muslim funeral.
What I think
there it is.
Look at that very Christian ceremony there. what I find really astonishing about all of this is apparently, after he died, everyone, well, he was actually a Muslim, so really we should bury him as a Muslim, poor old chap. And the people at the mosque went, he pretended to be a Christian. That doesn't make him a good Muslim. We don't want to pay for this. I don't think his family and friends rattled the coins together to make a coffin.
Well, who do you think paid
Not
for
a
it
bad
then?
coffin. Well, the local authorities, when no one else is
Do you
going
know
to pay
that?
for. I don't, but I think it's worth asking because I mean, the rule is if your family and friends aren't going to pay for your burial, it lands on the taxpayer. So I want to know who has paid for that funeral.
Well, do these people think we're stupid? I mean,
Yes.
that's the question I'm asking.
They do.
Yeah, I think they must do because
don't care.
As you say, actually, I'm Christian, and that gets you into this country, or that gets you off, escaping being done for being an illegal arrival. But actually, it turns out, no, I'm Muslim, and when it comes to my final death, I want to be buried as a Muslim. I mean, how stupid do they think we are? And this is going on not just in this case, but in many cases when it comes to the asylum system. And I think it needs to be changed immediately.
As I keep saying, we should say to the likes of Abdul Azadi, you can convert to Christianity or not. It won't make any difference whatsoever to your asylum application. If we did that, then they'd stop converting, trust me.
No, couldn't agree more.